Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. It is the fourth of the best. Okay, we're going to talk about this before we get into things, Richie. It is March 23rd, the fourth day of March Madness. And I have long had a take on March Madness that I might back off of. But Double Fries No Slaw presented by Guthrie's. We appreciate Roback, Garnet and Gold, and BetUS for their support as well. We'll talk more about them later. Richie, I've often called this the best 4 days, the best 4 consecutive days of sports. The Thursday through Sunday of the opening weekend, especially that Thursday, Friday, like there is nothing like having 16 games a day, 4 games going on at once at all, basically all times, except for like the very beginning and the very end of the day. Does this, and I've gotten people that I've said this on social media and people have said like, oh, well, you're just mad that Florida State's not in it. For most of my life, Florida State has not been in the tournament. So like, I get that that's like a funny troll thing to say. And for almost all of my life, Florida State has not been in like the second weekend of the tournament. So even when they were in it, they were out pretty quickly. So my love for March Madness, as much as I love the Noles, has nothing to do with FSU. Like, I'll just say that. Like, I don't love March Madness because I'm a UConn fan or a Duke fan or whatever. I love March Madness because it's so underwhelming to me right now. I don't think that it's that fun. I don't think it's that exciting. This tournament, there haven't been a lot of upsets. There haven't even really been that many close games. There have been some. There's not been one buzzer beater, that really like was consequential. So I don't know. This year, and I think there's reasons for it. I think they're very obvious reasons. We didn't have this in the show notes. But you're a basketball guy, so we can talk about it a little bit. I think this tournament has been underwhelming. I don't think it's been that good.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody loves a good Cinderella story, but I'm not against chalk, right? Like if it
gives you better games later.
The best teams are winning. That's awesome. You very rarely get it like a VCU who went down to the Final Four, and unfortunately, I think they lost to Florida that year. That sucks. But it's been not a great tournament in terms of games. There's a great one going on right now with UF and UConn, which we can't watch, obviously. But at the same time, it's not been a great. We haven't seen many great games yet, but I do think we're going to see a lot of really good games next week, and I'm really excited about that. And yeah, with Florida State, obviously the 2020 national champions not being in it, that doesn't bother me a little bit. I've put some money on a few games, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, the tournament's not been phenomenal so far this year.
I think that you are right about the fact that you do get if you have. Florida was like an upset killer for a while. You remember they also beat George Mason back in 2004?
That's what I was thinking, George Mason. Because VCU knocked out Florida State in the Elite Eight. That's what it was.
I want to say Florida also beat the Dunk City, Lob City, Florida Gulf Coast. When they made it really far too. Like
2016,
yeah, they always have, it feels like an easy road. But regardless, so the reasons though, there are less great mid-majors. There just are, right? NIL and the portal and just all that.
NIL killed it. Yeah.
Yeah, like
every
why
player from
small schools
going to go to a bigger school.
Yeah, that could be like they could develop guys and they could have a bunch of seniors, like a senior laden team that could get in there and compete because they play together for 4 years and get hot in March. This doesn't happen, man. You have a great year at a mid-major, you're just going to get called up. Like that's just what it is. But you are right. Like the worse your first couple of rounds are, usually the better your later stuff is. There's just so much less parity in college basketball now. Whereas football, I feel like it's kind of like but that's the reason, right? Like in football, you had like 2 or 3 great teams, and now you've got like 8 teams or 12 teams that are all kind of similar.
You legit have 15 teams that could win it in football now.
Yeah. In college basketball, you used to have a bunch of, average teams that were fun in the tournament. Now it's just, there's 8 teams that could win this thing. Maybe 4. Now 8's probably high. There's probably like 3 or 4 teams that could actually win this thing.
Auburn, Alabama, Duke. Yeah.
So the tournament hasn't been as fun to me. I'd have some fun in about 10 and a half minutes if this game that we're watching goes the way we want. But yeah, the tournament's not been as fun. All right. we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk about the tournament later. Maybe we won't. We'll see how this game goes that we're keeping one eye on while we do this. But Double Fries Lone Star brought to you by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. You can visit all of their locations there: 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Apalachee Parkway. We appreciate Guthrie's as always for their support. Listen, I was down in Miami this week. There are no Guthrie's in Miami. Maybe something that should change. But I did have a lot, when you're with kids, like all they eat is chicken fingers, right? Like that's what you get when you go out to a restaurant or you get fast food or anything. We go to McDonald's and they get chicken nuggets. And we didn't do that in Miami. I'm just telling you, when you have kids, like that's all they seem to eat when you go out. So I ate a lot of chicken this week, and none of it as good as Guthrie. So I wish Miami did have a Guthrie's down there that I could have enjoyed while I was watching the Noles kick Miami's tail on the diamond. So. Yeah. All right, let's jump into things. Talk a little spring practice as that's underway. I think some interesting storylines that have come out there. Obviously, we've talked about just the fact that Florida State is underway with spring practice, the importance of getting things, up and going and, establishing the chemistry and the camaraderie and everything you need to for this season. I've had a couple of names mentioned to me that I thought were pretty interesting. We can talk about this, then we can talk, Richie, a little bit about quarterbacks maybe, and then anything else that we kind of have thoughts on or think is kind of pertinent. But Jalen Lucas is a name that has stuck out quite a bit. I often think back to the portal last year and how when we got 2 or 3, 4 games into the season, we kind of said like, man, did we miss on every single portal? Like we missed on every single portal pickup. And I don't think we did. I just think that the only 2 hits, at least for last year, we'll see if guys can kind of turn into hits going forward. But I do think that Jalen Lucas would have been a hit had he not gotten injured, and Richie Leonard probably would have been a hit had he not gotten injured. I think he probably ends up starting for the Noles this year. Jalen Lucas is a name that has stood out a little bit. And, do I think that he's going to go off for like some kind of incredible 1,000-yard season or anything like that? No, not really. But I do think that can he be like a little bit better Ja'Kai Douglas? Like, can he, who always seemed to come in clutch, always seemed to come in at the right moments, always seemed to kind of give you the spark you needed when you needed it at a tough time, whether that was against Miami, whether that was against Notre Dame, whether that was against Pitt, when Johnny Wilson and Keon were both limited. I think that's kind of an interesting one. Pre-injury, I heard a lot of Shaheem Brown hype. I heard a lot of just excitement around him, just kind of a reinvigorated attitude. I mean, like, call a spade a spade. There were plays where Shaheem quit last year. And I mean, I was in Tallahassee for one of them against North Carolina, where he basically just looked at the running back running by and was just like, yeah, I ain't doing nothing with that, And I think a lot of people were surprised that Shaheem came back, and so him kind of revitalizing and getting back to form. I mean, incredibly talented kid, obviously walked off, the game his first year against LSU with the block. I think getting good play out of your safeties, which I think Florida State likes their defensive backs. I think that's really important. Obviously, unfortunate that he's not out there. Same with Conrad Hussey due to the injury. And then Edwin Joseph. I think they really like, Q Jones. I think they are confident in their cornerbacks, but I've heard Edwin Joseph has had a really nice kind of start to spring, kind of just solid in workouts, solid in tour of duty, and they're really excited about what they may get out of him, which I think is good. I mean, there are questions that I have about this defense from defensive line to linebacker. I don't know that secondary. Now, obviously, if you I don't know how long Brown and Hussey are out, but as long as you get them back and you get good effort out of them, I do think there's some excitement around the defensive backs. And if you can, there's certainly excitement around Darrell Jackson and James Williams from Nebraska and some other defensive linemen you have, some young guys that you brought in. But if you can get, pretty good play or decent level play out of your defensive line to where that's not a liability, I do think there's some excitement about what you have in the secondary, and Edwin Joseph being a big part of that. So a name that has been brought up to me pretty consistently, and so I don't know. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys you mentioned also they're basically in their money years, right? Let's start with Jalen Lucas, who you mentioned first. He's not going to be an NFL receiver. He's kind of a tweener, running back, receiver. What is he? But at the same time, he could be a specialty person in the NFL. He could be a punt returner, a kickoff returner. His speed is elite. His elusiveness is very good. So I think he can be a very, very good college player. And if he's healthy, I kind of expect that from him. And I think Gus Malzahn will find ways to utilize him And then, going to the defensive backfield, you mentioned Shaheem Brown. Again, he's a guy that's in his money year. Like he is trying to get to the NFL, and his entire focus right now is going to be on doing everything he can to put film on tape uh, and get there for next year. And I think that motivation alone, I truly do think matters. And the same with Gerald Jackson, who you mentioned. A lot of people were surprised he came back. I was surprised he came back, quite frankly. But at the same time, I think he came back with a purpose, right? He's here to do everything he can to, put film on tape to for the NFL scouts and just to show that he is ready. He's got an NFL body. Like there's no doubt about that. But last year was kind of disappointing, quite frankly. I think he'll be more focused this year. I think there's less distractions for him, and we don't need to go into all of what those could have been last year. But I think Darrell Jackson is someone who would have a really big year for Florida State this year.
Yeah, and I think they need him too, right? Like the position group that I probably have the most questions about. I have questions about, really every position group on offense because so much of it's new. I mean, you think about that new starting running back, new starting quarterback, probably 2 new starting wide receivers. Landon was here last year, so that's not really a new starting tight end, but he didn't start last year, like to start the first game. And so, and 5 new offensive linemen. I mean, I guess Richie could play, and start, but I mean, did Richie Leonard start game 1? So maybe only 4 new offensive linemen. So yeah, so you have questions about that, but you don't really question the talent, or how good, you kind of know what, or expect kind of what you may get out of it compared to the ACC or whatever. The defensive line, though, they need Jackson to be really good. On the offensive side of the ball, Castellanos and Brock Glenn. I've heard some mixed things on just this situation. I mean, it sounded like Brock took some first team reps even in the first week and maybe took a good amount of them. But I've heard really good Brock things. It just would shock me unless he just took a jump from last year that is just out of this world. It just feels like it would shock me if Thomas Castellanos wasn't under center game 1 against Alabama. I'll say this, obviously there's the pessimist and optimist way of viewing anything. And if the situation was that Brock just took an out of this world leap and really took that starting job, then I guess that'd be a positive. And the proof would be in the pudding once the games got underway. But it just feels like if Castellanos somehow didn't start this season, it feels like a massive either miscalculation, misjudgment. I mean, you basically gave up on Luke to get Castellanos. Now, obviously, Luke probably wanted to leave anyway, but you mortgaged your future to win right now. And then if that guy that you picked to win right now doesn't end up starting for you, I don't know. I'm not trying to paint a super negative picture. If Brock comes out and somehow is in New York City for the Heisman or something, then yeah, sure, that worked out really well for Florida State. I'm certainly not projecting that, but I think that's interesting. All that said, I don't really think it's a thing. I think people are trying to make the quarterback thing something that it's not.
Yeah, and with media being not allowed in practice for the most part this spring, people are going to hear from different sources in different things. So everything we hear is basically secondhand information. But at the same time, you don't bring a veteran like Castellanos into the program to not start him. I think he has every advantage when it comes to winning that starting job. But at the same time, I do think if Brock Glenn makes a huge jump and he's that good, then yeah, of course, you start him. And, that's unfortunate for Castellanos, who could have started probably somewhere else, maybe a smaller school. But I think Malzahn loves having mobile quarterbacks, and I think that's a big deal. And I do think Castellanos is going to be the starter. But we'll continue to, hear, again, secondhand reports. So we're not hearing anything directly. But at the same time, you don't bring him in to not start him.
No, I agree. I think that, and again, if he doesn't start, then I think you're kind of sitting there saying well, what in the world happened here? Right.
It's a waste of a scholarship.
Yeah. I mean, if Brock, Now again, if that's because Brock like takes his game to an insane level that we never thought possible, then yeah, I mean, nobody's going to be upset with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would surprise me. I mean, Brock being ahead of him right now is not super surprising because Brock's been in the system for 3 years. Yeah, we'll see who's taking the certain reps later on. Painting it. I do think the idea of painting it as anything but that is, I mean, just what you got to do when there's no practice to actually talk about, maybe. So this was interesting. Lewayne McCoy injured. And that was reported on by the media, something that we haven't gotten over the last few years under Mike Norvell, just because of the practice rules. I don't know if it's a huge deal. It sounds like a hamstring. Certainly would think that, that would be something that he'd be fine by the time that practice got back around. I know something that they're not like super excited about, just because they think he can be really good for Florida State this year. But I don't know if you have any thoughts there, or just thoughts on that being reported and coming out, not really a surprise with the rules changing, but wanted to bring that up quickly.
Yeah, no, and I think he definitely has a very bright future with Florida State. And by no means, let me make this clear for all the listeners, by no means am I comparing him to Dalvin Cook, but Dalvin played with a bum hamstring for an entire season and was still probably should have gone to New York. Yeah, it sucks because those are one of those injuries that can linger. Like I'd almost rather tear an ACL than have hamstring issues that can linger for a long time. Because ACL nowadays, it used to be 8-9 months. Now within 6-7 months, you can be back full health. So it sucks that he's dealing with that, but I think he'll be fine, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does on the field this year, because I think might be one of our most talented receivers.
Yeah, I hopefully with quite a long layoff, obviously not putting him back out there in spring at all, but with quite a long layoff, you would think that hopefully that's not something that lingers on into the season. Also, just the fact that you can kind of mix him around, when you're a running back and you're Dalvin Cook, like you were taking the ball just about every single play, certainly a little bit different as a wide receiver that can kind of get mixed in and play certain times, sit out certain times, whatever. All right, let's give BetUS a little bit of love. Listen, BetUS TV, we appreciate them for their support and working with us. If you're betting on any of the March Madness, if you're betting on NBA, NHL, MLB starts, is it this week? Is the MLB back this week? Betting on any of that, make sure that you're doing that with our friends over at BetUS, checking out BetUS TV for all of the lines, all of the coverage, really good stuff over there. And again, we appreciate them for their support. Not only spring football going on, Richie, this week, but a bunch of recruiting going on. Florida State did pick up a commit. We're recording this at 2 p.m. or we're live right now at 2 p.m. So if they get anything else here on Sunday, that's not a hint, hint, wink, wink. I literally have no clue what their chances are of another commit. I don't necessarily think I would predict it at this point, but I'd love to be wrong on that. They did pick up a commit earlier in the weekend. But outside of that, a big legacy weekend visit, and not to go. Well, let's just talk about a couple of guys. QB Bo Bowen is on campus. Certainly have to think that Florida State has work to do there. They obviously need to fairly quickly get a quarterback into this class. Like you had, your quarterback decommit, and I think he's now with Washington. You've got to get a quarterback into this class that you can kind of start to build around. That's not an easy job at all for Florida State. A lot of quarterbacks already committed at this point. Most quarterbacks committed in the spring at a lot of programs just because they do. They want to, help recruit their class. You've had, you usually build quarterback relationships first, and they're one of the first people to commit into your class. And so Florida State kind of up against it, but with the uncertainty around like, hey, what is Norvell's job security? What does the future at Florida State look like? Not an easy thing, but something they certainly need to get done and going on pretty quickly. 4-star running back Jay Lamar. That's one that I think is probably going to be tough for Florida State. Georgia, involved there. Another 4-star running back in Carson Baker as well. A bunch of schools involved in that one. On campus, Brandon Bennett, big battle with Miami on that one of 4-star wide receivers. So a lot going on campus right now. A lot of young guys. What I've noticed though, and we'll talk about the commit in just a minute. I we've talked about how important recruiting is. We've talked about how Florida State needs to get better at recruiting, how they need to finish, in or around that top 10, 12 area. I've kind of said that 15 is kind of where I would have them pegged right now. It doesn't seem to me like they're in it for, and I understand they're coming off a 2-win season. I don't know how much that matters because coming off a 13-win season, they still couldn't hold on to their guys. I don't know that I'm sold yet on this staff recruiting. Now, they haven't had a full year yet. I'm not, but they just, it is March and kids commit earlier and earlier and earlier than they ever have. And I just don't know if Florida State's that in it for enough elite guys right now. Like, they've got some nice pieces on campus right now that they're targeting, but finishing top 5 for a kid doesn't really matter, right? Like you need to land some, and maybe I'm judging a little unfairly. Maybe I'm judging a little harshly too early, but I mean, I know Bud got some heat for talking about this week, but it doesn't feel like they have enough elite guys that they're truly in the mix for right now. Now they closed really well on signing day last year. Maybe they pull something like that off again. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't have the warm and fuzzies right now when it comes to FSU recruiting. Not trying to be super negative, just trying to call it like it is. I know people will say, oh, recruiting doesn't matter until signing day anyway. Yeah, but you got to start to land kids because kids are committing earlier and earlier and earlier and in the spring and in the summer. And I'm sure they'll go on a run. I'm sure they'll get a bunch of guys committed in June, July. I just don't, the hope of turning this thing around by recruiting better, I don't know that I have the warm and fuzzies on it just yet.
Not at all. And you know what? It was exciting because there was a lot of elite talent on campus this weekend, for the recruiting weekend. But at the same time, almost every single one of them are not leaning towards Florida State right now, right? So maybe you've made up some ground. That'd be great if Norvell and Malzahn, if they were able to make up some ground. But when you look at the names, the elite names, the high 4 stars that were on campus, they're looking at Oklahoma, Georgia. They're really, Florida State is in the mix for some of them, but at the same time, it's a uphill climb. And I know Mike Norvell loves to climb, but you do not want to be in that position when it comes to recruiting. And to your point, you should have a quarterback committed by now. That is the one position where they all commit early, right? Very rarely in recent years do you see a high-profile quarterback commit on signing day or, even during the season.
Oh, even season, yeah. It'll be before June, I think.
But. Yeah, they all want to commit before their high school season starts. And here we are with nothing in hand, and that is concerning. And, high school recruiting has been a concern for Norvell since he's been here. And, of course, his first few years, he got a little bit of grace. Which makes sense because, he didn't have connections to the Southeast, whatever it may be. But this year, I mean, coming off a 13-win season, then a 2-win season, and now still not having your quarterback in place. Again, I think he finally figured out that he cannot rely entirely on the portal. But what are we doing in terms of addressing it right now? Because I don't think we're addressing it.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe, and I will say, on a lot of new staff, a lot of guys that are, they did just get, a lot of them did just get on campus, right? They've been on campus for 4 months or less, some of them, around 3 months. And so it does take some time to build some relationships, but I don't know. It doesn't, I don't know that they're in the mix for enough elite guys right now for me to feel great. Maybe that changes really quickly, and then I'll eat some crow, but, I don't know. This is my warning for like the 26 class. I don't know. I'm still thinking around 15-ish, but like I was hoping to kind of be lowball in there and be a little higher. I don't know if I feel great. I think 15 is kind of maybe your ceiling instead of your floor at this point. They did get a commit this week. 3-star Michael Ionata. Interior offensive lineman, 6'5.5", 300 pounds, out of Calvary Christian, Clearwater, Florida. I just drove by Calvary Christian when I went out to the softball game. It's right across the street from where that softball tournament takes place down in Clearwater. The 68th ranked interior offensive lineman, composite number 773. As a junior, he started at left tackle for Calvary Christian that made Florida's to a playoffs. He's a legacy, so legacy weekend. His dad did play offensive line at Florida State in the 1980s. He was an honorable All-American, sheesh, from the AP in 1988. He also has a brother that plays offensive line at Alabama. A kid that I had been told back in January that Florida State really put the full court press on, didn't seem to have a great relationship with the previous offense, with Atkins, but it sounds like Hand really did put the pressure on, made him feel like a priority. I'll tell you, Florida State wasn't going up against, the absolute who's who of college football to land him. Kentucky was probably one of his better offers as well, but, offers that were not necessarily, like off the chart or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you did land him. I'm not trying to crap on it. Hopefully it's somebody that they can get in and develop. He's got a lot of good size, and you certainly need to load up on size offensive linemen. Seems to be a trend, a theme with what Herb Hand wants to do. Whereas at Florida State, like under Atkins, it was find athletic guys, and Herb really seems to like the size that he brings. So, like I said, probably translates interior here at the next level. Will not, I don't think it's kind of any kind of early start or anything like that. Like he'll have to get in and really, put in the work, be developed, and then maybe have a future playing offensive line at Florida State. I don't think it's I don't think it's necessarily a bad take, but it's certainly one that you're going to have to work to develop for sure. So thoughts on the offensive line pickup?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad take, right? But at the same time, to your point, he will not, be productive on the offensive line for at least 3 years at minimum. And, again, he's an interior guy. And when high school, there are not very many elite offensive tackles out there. There just aren't. And, we know the schools they go to, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. But you got to go find some of them and bring them to Tallahassee because, it's easier to find an interior offensive lineman. It's much more difficult to find a legitimate college-built offensive tackle. And, Florida State just has not done that in years. And it's frustrating because, you bank on the portal and you think of a guy like Jeremiah Byers, who, quite frankly, didn't really work out. And we'll see what happens moving forward. But, yeah, it's hard for me to get excited about a mid-tier interior offensive lineman. Again, decent pickup. It's not a bad take by Florida State staff. But at the same time, I just cannot get excited about this one.
Yeah, it's not something to necessarily write home about. It's a win. You need to fill out your class. Maybe, you continue to see improvement from him over this last year. He rises a little bit in the rankings, becomes a little more sought after, and then you develop him well too. Maybe we'll see how much if he
then you lose more.
Yeah, don't rise too much in the rankings. So we'll see though. Recruiting, it's the lifeblood of a program, and we might be on life support as a football team right now. So it's what it is. Somebody that's not on life support, Garnet and Gold. Make sure that if you are shopping for any gear, any baseball, softball, we'll talk about both those sports in just a minute. But if you're shopping for anything, you are shopping at garnetandgold.com. We appreciate them for their support. You can get 15% off of your order by using the code NOSLAW, NOSLAW, for 15% off your order at garnetandgold.com. Richie, I was down in Miami this week and saw the baseball team a couple of times. And what a fun weekend. We don't do a ton of baseball, softball on here, but I'll give them a little love and then we'll wrap up. Baseball won the first game of the series. I think it was 14-1, 14-2. I'm just absolute bludgeoning. Lost the second game and then won the Saturday night game, Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, and ended up winning the series against the Hurricanes in a really fun series, kind of back and forth. They win a game, lose a game, win a game, and it was fun to see them. Always fun to beat Miami. I believe that right now Florida State, I don't have the tweet right in front of me, Actually, I do. Yeah, somebody just liked it, so it kind of back up to the top. Florida State is 11-2 against Miami during the 24-25 school year. Obviously, the two losses being football, maybe the one that people care about the most, and then the one baseball loss. And over the last 2 years, Florida State is 24-3 against Miami in all sports. I think there might be a couple of more like kind of Olympic sports that get do take place this year, so maybe have a chance to expound on that just a little bit. But always fun to beat your rivals.
No, definitely, and I'm jealous you got to go down there to see that in Coral Gables, not in the city of Miami, which Miami fans would like you to believe. But no, they're off to an extremely hot start, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but the loss to Florida, that's a midweek game. I don't really care about midweek games because you're not throwing your aces, you're not throwing anyone well. You still got to hit the ball and you still got to score runs. So that they need to figure that out a little bit in these midweek games. But yeah, they look like a definite team that could make it to Omaha this year. And if I had to put money on it right now, I would bet they will.
Yeah, their pitching's unreal. I know that Mendez and Arnold didn't have great days this weekend. I don't know if that's just due to being on the road, due to the rivalry, or just both of them kind of being off a little bit. But found a way to win, found a way to beat your rivals regardless of that. And, just really fun, as always to win like that. On the other side, softball beat Alabama on the road on Wednesday night, and then they're playing Duke in the third game of their 3-game series.
So they're 4-1 in their last 5 at Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
Big win against
a very good softball program.
Yeah, big win on the road against a ranked team there, and then Duke is maybe before this series kind of thought of as a potential they were voted the preseason ACC champions, and so won the first 2 against Duke, up 7-2 right now in the last inning. Hold your breath. Yesterday they were up 11-1 and ended up winning 12-11. So I guess anything could happen, but if they can get 3 outs here, we'll consider this a sweep, and if not, I'll have to get back on here and edit this out. But 3 outs away from a sweep up at Duke, 4 ranked wins in a row when the team desperately needed it after dropping. I think they had dropped 4 straight games to ranked opponents, 2 to Oregon, 2 to Texas A&M. So good to pick up these wins for sure for the softball team. A really good week for both teams. And then, like you said, Florida plays Florida State. Florida and Florida State play on Tuesday night in Jacksonville. So it'd be great for Florida State to kind of continue some of the upward and positive momentum trajectory, playing another rival here in just 2 days.
Random thought, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me. I think Florida and Florida State should do a weekend series. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Gainesville, Jacksonville, Tallahassee. It makes no sense why they don't do that.
So I'd be fine with that. I think it should just be at home. Like it should just be home and home, right? Like that's a lot of travel for people that are trying to get around to games. Hotels in 3 cities would be tough. I'd have no problem with that. I think I'd like that better than what we have now, the 3 random Tuesdays. It's a lot of travel for the team too, a lot of logistics. I'd just be fine. I mean, it should just be a weekend series to me. Just I don't really care, I don't care if they played it in Jacksonville every year, which, I don't really love that. Like I'd rather it just be like a home, playing in Gainesville one year, playing in Florida State the next year. But yeah, I certainly would prefer for it to be a weekend series. I doubt that ever happens soon, but it would be nice if they could at some point figure that out.
Yeah.
But I'll leave the rest of my thoughts there alone on that. Richie, you want to give Roback some love, and then what else you got? Some shout outs or anything?
Yeah, no, Roback, RHOBACK.com. Use promo code DFNS20 for 20% off your first order. I'm actually wearing the Roback Performance pullover and joggers right now. I promise once you buy from them, you will buy again. So take the opportunity to use our discount DFNS20 at Roback.com. Bunch of great Florida State gear and a bunch of other just random neutral gear that you can get as well.
Appreciate Roback for their support. What about shout outs? You got anything this afternoon?
Shout out to my bracket. I am literally in dead last in my bracket pool right now.
That's gross.
So shout out my bracket and all the teams that I picked who lost.
Yeah, mine's just meh. Like again, I tried to find upsets and it's basically been all chalk minus McNeese State and one or two other ones. So, yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate Roback, appreciate Garnet and Gold, Bet US TV, and Guthrie's for their support. Those are my shout outs for the day. Shout out UConn for blowing it here at the end. Like one bucket in the last 6 minutes of play. So screw you, UConn. That's all I got. We'll be back next week for sure. Similar time, right around 1 or so. And we appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.
Go Noles.